Okay, we are recording. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia. I'm with Unsheltered Phoenix. I'm here with Shay, who's helping us out today. Shay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I'm Shay. I'm a friend of Sophie's. We worked on a couple of projects together. I kind of new to Arizona. I've lived here for a few, for since January, like 6 months, 7 months, whatever. And I've taken a huge interest in what's been going on in the place known as the Zone in downtown Phoenix. Looked into some of the projects that are going on, and yeah, that's why I'm here to share some perspective.
Thank you, Shay. I appreciate you. One of the reasons we're here talking to you all today is because there has been a survey floating around on the plan to address homelessness. And this is a 30-page plan of a lot of what I immediately want to call bullshit. It's really vague, and honestly, the survey that goes along with it is even more vague and full of shit. I wanted to go over it with someone who isn't super familiar, like I imagine a lot of you aren't,
Yeah.
and just gain a perspective and go through it together about how the city is intentionally making the process ambiguous and really I hadn't planned to fuck with it after what happened with the Phoenix shelter bed portal. The Phoenix PD will have primary access to. We had so many people call in and so many amazing testimonies and statements of people who understood that it was an absolute bad idea and really intended to override the recent Supreme Court precedent that made camping legal. And I was so heartbroken, and people I collaborate with were so heartbroken that we spent so much time and energy into that we really didn't want to fuck with this survey at all. And now most recently I found out that the survey hasn't been made available to anyone actually experiencing homelessness. And so it's one thing for me and my privilege to decide that I'm just not going to fuck with it. City council doesn't want to listen to me. City of Phoenix really doesn't want to listen to me. But I couldn't let it slide that the city of Phoenix hadn't even made any type of effort whatsoever to engage the unsheltered population in this process. And so we're going to go over the survey today, and hopefully everyone at the end of this will feel comfortable with signing up to speak or putting in a public comment, saying that this whole entire process needs to be postponed until people closest to the problem are consulted. And if people experiencing homelessness, if they decide fuck this, I don't want to deal with it, then that's completely their prerogative. But the fact that no choice has been made available is something that we should all have an absolute issue with. So I'm going to share my screen right now once I remember how to do that. Here we are. Share. Okay, so if you go to Phoenix, there will be a bit.ly posted, but if you go to phoenix.gov/human services/homeless help, you'll find a survey on proposed strategies to address homelessness. The fact that there's a separate survey for people experiencing homelessness that doesn't go nearly in detail is also something I want to bring up. It's a load of shit.
On the surface, it looks good, but
yeah,
there's a huge problem with that
let's
because
just for shits and giggles, we'll click on that. And so it looks like, what is the primary cause of your homelessness? And that lists some things here. What services do you need in order to find permanent housing? What are the barriers you experience finding permanent housing? Check all that apply. Are you currently staying in a shelter? If no, why? And that's it. That's 6 questions, multiple check boxes, and it doesn't say anything about what's being planned once this data is collected. And so, yeah, so that's one piece of information that I call bullshit on. We'll go ahead and go to the main survey and its strategies to address homelessness. It says it takes 8 minutes to complete. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to follow it along and call out some of the things that are extremely problematic within it. So here, if it was intended for unsheltered people to participate in the survey, they might want to know how many responses are actually from people experiencing homelessness. There is nowhere in this, initial first questioning that gives people that opportunity. You're either just a Phoenix resident, business owner, property owner, homeless service provider, nonprofit worker, or other. For the purposes of completing a survey, I'm going to put Phoenix resident. My zip code is 85006. I am in District 4. And then this is important right here. It says the following questions are directly related to strategies to address homelessness plan. Below is a key that explains the lead partners associated with each strategy. So here, this little bird here is the City of Phoenix government, which makes sense. Hands shaking is nonprofit partners. This little Capitol building is other governments, and the community neighborhood organizations, which is a whole nother topic of conversation, will look like these kids playing Ring Around the Rosies. So we click OK on that and we'll hit next. And here is the first main question of this survey. Shay, do you want to take a look at that and give me your first thoughts as someone who isn't super familiar with the survey?
I would say on the surface, it doesn't look terrible. It's when you take this increase the availability of mental health services thing. On the surface, that sounds like a great idea, right? Of course, like a lot of people experiencing shelterlessness and homelessness oftentimes don't get like the proper mental health care that they need for whatever reason. You'd think that not having a home would hinder a lot of that sort of like getting access to that treatment, right? To me, it seems it's incredibly vague. Like, what exactly do they mean by, what mental health services are they talking about? Are they gonna get more social workers out there? Are they going to provide them with healthcare, which oftentimes a lot of them don't have? I see a lot of it's too vague to get like a real understanding of what like they mean by that. It could go a long way if they're engaging it in a way that like had some transparency and you knew exactly what they were doing, but this could mean like a million different things.
Yeah, you're completely right. And that ambiguity is honestly what I'd like to point out most about this first question. Also this wording, words like pursue, explore, analyze, identify. None of these words actually mean they're doing anything. And once you actually read the plan, if you ever, take the time to do that, a little bit of detail is cast to each of these line items, but not much. They really do leave it incredibly vague. And I'd like to point out when something is so vague and already approved, right? Because let's not forget that this plan is already approved. This plan was approved with no public input. In fact, the plan wasn't even made available to the public at the time that it was approved. And that honestly, I don't understand the reasoning behind that whatsoever.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would they be trying to gauge the public's interest in this now after the plan was already approved?
I think they received a shitstorm of criticism is why they're coming up with this extremely vague survey.
But it's even deeper than that. Like if it's already approved, what are they going to do to change it if after the public like institutes like their input?
Right, and that's also something worth noting, right? Because back to the to the shelter bed portal, that was rolled out literally the day after this plan was approved, and it included details that were not included in the plan whatsoever. So I think we're really going to we're really going to understand the full harm and detriment that this plan poses until, until after they're already trying to sneak things by on us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to go ahead and point that out. There's plenty more to call out once once we go through this survey. Do you think this should be included in the plan? Well, all of this sounds nice and vague, and I'll go ahead and put maybe. And all of these topics are extremely important. Additional Veterans Affairs resources are necessary to serve the homeless veteran population. Yeah. Identify funding for outreach. They're all important, but more information needs to be had in order for us to sign our name to it, right?
Exactly. We need to know exactly what data they're collecting and what purpose is it for. And a even bigger question, honestly, if they already approved the plan, why are they asking about it now in the first place?
Yeah, what are they going to do retroactively, right? And I think the plan should be halted completely. I don't think that's something that they're going to listen to, but at the very minimum, I'm going to put in this comment, and I'll follow this theme throughout the surveys. We demand full transparency into all of the data collected from the surveys, right? Because it's not enough that you're having this bullshit survey. You better let us know what the results are. And an extension for the public comment meetings until they're accessible to people experiencing homelessness. I don't know how far this will get us, but this is the strategy I'm taking for now. And I'll go ahead and copy and paste this into each one of the boxes that allow for comments. So on to the next section of housing. It's a lot of information. I'm going to give you a second, Shay, to go ahead and look at it, and we'll talk about what this section is getting away with in a minute.
Now, there's a couple of things that I actually kind of like here. They utilize vacant hotel, motel, and apartments in partnership with like nonprofits to operate and provide services.
Right.
If it's implemented correctly, there's absolutely no strategy here and in how that would be implemented, right?
Right.
But giving people shelter that they need to like get themselves on their feet is very obviously like a very good thing. You need to have your foot in the door somewhere to even like get on the ground moving.
Right.
And providing shelter that maybe doesn't exclude people experiencing like excessive like mental health conditions or maybe like some sort of form of addiction. If they had their own private space, they'd actually be able to get the treatment that they might need.
Right. So housing first is what you're talking about right now, and yeah. I completely agree. Housing can't be the only thing, but housing is one of the bare minimums. I would even argue that a shelter bed would be including in that housing first model, as people need to have that basic dignity and that basic humanity of of having that a roof over their head, that stability that really everything else builds off of, as far as becoming, a contributing member of society. You're right, that line item does sound really good. And I would love to hear more about what's happening with this specific line item, because it sounds like something that we could really get on board. But it is, like we said, once again, it's extremely vague, and the opportunity for, lack of accountability is running rampant throughout this survey. So we just want more details. We want more details, and we want to make sure that our resources aren't being spent frivolously, and that they're going to the things they say they're going to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, darling.
So this is going to be one of those things basically where they're on the surface, if you're reading things like at a very like, I don't know, I don't want to say introductory level, that sounds wrong. But if you're reading it at a very like a surface level, it'll sound like really good, like, hey, they're actually doing something to help. But by not giving us any details, like, it's really hard to gauge any like sort of malicious intent. Maybe that's not exactly the right way to phrase that,
right?
But they could be doing this to maybe they I apologize. English is hard, all right? Unfortunately, this is a fact of reality that people have to live with. It's the worst language, all right? Anyways, like I was saying, they could be implementing these ways, implementing these things in a way that actually harms like the shelterless community more than it would help it, or make things a lot more difficult for them in the long run.
Right. Yes. And I love that you use the word malicious, because I think a lot of times when we call out, or when I personally call out city council, everyone assumes that, like, I think that these people are devils and that they, they don't give a fuck about homelessness. But ultimately, when you combine the ability for profit to be made in conjunction with helping people, it's then that you get these, very uneven playing fields, and that's really what we want to
Yeah.
address, is that there shouldn't be an opportunity for people to profit if it means taking resources from people who are experiencing homelessness. Um,
Yeah, especially since like we we've known basically just with how this country works, people tend to care more about profit than they do people.
and that would be a 10-hour Zoom call if we, at least if we wanted to even touch on that little iceberg.
Mhm.
But I'm going to
Companies like reopening without proper protections during the COVID crisis. Um,
schools opening without, like, really any more resources given to students or teachers. Okay, nope, we're not going to go there because it'll just take too much time.
Look, it's just examples in how business owners tend to care more about profit than people. That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
No, absolutely. And so once again, here I'm going to put maybe, because we need more information. And how important do you think is this section? I think it's extremely important. Once again, all the things we're talking about. I'm going to go ahead and paste that same statement below and click OK to get on to the next section, which is housing specifically to the city of Phoenix. And I want to point out in this first line item, low barrier shelter beds region-wide is something that is actually proposed in the Human Services Campus plan to add more shelter beds. The Andre House will be hosting low barrier shelter, which is something that's wildly needed within the zone and within Phoenix in general. And that's also, like I said, what you were talking about earlier with people who can't get past these strict rules in order to take advantage of some shelter beds. Is there anything else? Just giving this a quick scan over of something that stands out to you.
Is your phone ringing?
It is, and it's so far away that I am going to let it ring. I think it stopped. Hopefully they don't call back.
Okay, honestly, it was a little distracting.
Sorry.
I would really like to know what they mean by conduct an education campaign.
Oh, yes. How vague can you get? Yes, that is an excellent one.
Um, enhance public-private partnerships.
Yes, that is another one that just sounds like, something associated with a Batman villain. Um, So I'd like to know more about that too. Honestly, I think the most important line item of this section is H.5.3. Redevelop city-owned land with mixed income housing. And mixed income housing is something that sounds really, really shiny on the surface, but it's absolutely a plan to gentrify neighborhoods. And I'm going to be hopefully speaking with people more about this in the future, but I want people to be aware of what this term means. I can't highlight it, but mixed income housing is something that we should all be paying attention to right now and in the future when it comes to housing solutions. See, all of these sound good. Increased number of emergency and low barrier shelters, utilize vacant hotel, motels, apartments, partner with nonprofits. All of this sounds so good, and really,
Yeah.
I would like it to be approved, by citizens on a case by case basis, because that's the only chance we're going to have in order to gain all the details of a certain thing.
I mean, I really like what they're putting here for the most part, but the problem is, like I said, it's a very surface level. You don't know how they're implementing these plans exactly, or what the purposes for the plans are in the first place. Like you
Right.
said, like the mixed income thing could be used to gentrify neighborhoods, which will in turn like raise rent prices on people and potentially like make them more susceptible to falling into poverty or make their experiences in poverty even worse.
Thank you for
Um,
pointing that out. That's exactly right.
when it comes to increasing the number of emergency or low barrier shelter beds in the region, um, how exactly are they going to implement this? Are they going to create new shelters that are being compliant with like the CDC's recommendations on like social distancing for COVID-19, all those kind of things, or are they just going to not follow those guidelines and only use shelters currently in place and potentially put the shelterless population at risk? As we can see through statistics and studies on how coronavirus tends to affect people in poverty, it hits them a lot worse. If you don't have access to healthcare, or if going into the doctor might make you keep you away from work, and then you end up like losing your housing in the first place. I guess that doesn't necessarily apply to the shelterless population, but
You would be surprised how many people are actually, experiencing homelessness and have regular jobs. But I see what you're saying for sure.
yeah, I was talking mostly about like people that do have jobs, but like can't afford like a $400 emergency.
Oh, right. Who
Yeah,
can, honestly?
I know I can't.
Right? Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. That's an excellent point. So once again, I'm going to put maybe, and I'm going to put extremely important, and I'm going to copy and paste that same phrase, that we demand full transparency, and that the public comment needs to be extended until they're accessible by people experiencing homelessness. Here we are at this mustard yellow section. Uh,
See, I'm
and
usually a big fan of yellow, but more like the
right,
yellow on this plaid
of
little
all,
crop top thing. But
yeah, of all the shades, I'm going to give you a minute to look over that, and we'll probably proceed with the same responses. But does anything stand out?
identify employers willing to hire upon uh, a client successful completing training and obtaining applicable certifications or credentials. That doesn't sound too bad, honestly. Speaking to some of the shelterless people down in the zone, a lot of them said that they just wanted work.
You're so right. And honestly, this is one of the few sections that I was like, wow, all of this could be really great. But once again, it's all of those details that I'm concerned with that are not listed here, that really have the potential to be harmful when they look like something good. And we're seeing this not only through our own local government, but through our federal government as well. As like, give us all the details, and then we'll make an informed decision. For now, this is not something that we can agree to, or that we should agree to put our names to.
Yeah, with how problematic the rest of the questionnaires are, you you can't really give the government any room here. Not sure if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right. We shouldn't have to assume anything, knowing their track record, especially knowing the track record of people like, Kate Gallego and Noah Kowski. I cannot sign anything until I have all of the information. This is another section that looks like it could be good. Um, I especially like advocate for ability to treat addiction similarly to other mental health disorders for emergency hospitalization evaluation.
Yeah, that right there is amazing. The more we decriminalize like drug use and actually institute a system of like mental health treatment for people that are experiencing addiction, like the better they are to get their feet on off the ground. Uh,
Right.
Unbeknownst to maybe some people, if you're going to jail, there's a cycle that's involved in all that. You go to jail once, the likelihood that you're going to go to jail again because of all the problems that come with it are pretty high. And it's also a lot harder to find employment after going to jail. And that's just going to amplify uh, the cycle of poverty for you in that instance. And
Thank you so much, Shay, for bringing that up because you cannot address homelessness without addressing the constant criminalization and how incredibly counterproductive that, the criminalization of poverty is to any type of communal well-being. They don't exist together, right? We're not making anyone safer when we criminalize petty things as well. And I want to point out specifically in this section again, you have words like advocate, identify, seek, identify, advocate, explore, and then you have this last one here, you have fund. And that's honestly, that's one of the first times I'm seeing throughout the survey where they actually name an action. All of these other things are really things that can be disguised as actions when they're not. Seeking additional mental health specific recovery facilities. That doesn't mean that they're going to make more of these facilities or that they're going to fund them. It just means they're going to look into it. And that's, we have.
yeah, it's like they're waving their hand and saying, yeah, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
But
But what,
they really gonna do something? That's the
and
question.
to their benefit, they may look into it, but all of this sounds actionable, but none of it is actually portraying
Yeah.
action.
The thing is, you have to differentiate between like what's performative and what's actual action.
Yeah. What's the difference there between acting like you're going to do something and doing something?
Yeah.
So once again, we're going to put maybe for that section, extremely important, and we're going to copy and paste that phrase once again.
A little alliteration is good, all right?
Yeah.
Actual action. I'm sorry.
You're good. Um, so here, once again, take a look. Let me know what you think. Anything stands out there?
There's a couple more examples of that, very performative language that they're going to look into it, but they're not actually going to do something. I do see develop information and research guides to better educate neighborhoods on available resources, continue implementation and evaluate expansion. Evaluate expansion, the gated alley program pilot. That the grammar there is wrong.
Yes, but more important there is the gated alley program pilot. And
I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it.
Yes, thank you for saying that. There was an excellent article recently put out by the New Times and a reporter named, I think his name is Erasmus Baxter, has a really unique name, shed some light into how the city of Phoenix was using homelessness relief funds. So just to be clear, money used to help people experiencing homelessness, they were using to gate off alleyways that people, experiencing homelessness were sleeping in or using the bathroom in, or, otherwise habiting in any way. They're putting up these gates so that the alleys are completely inaccessible. And you've seen this most recently in the zone.
Yeah, I did.
So that's awful. And another thing you're going to see is illegal dumping cameras to discourage congregation in these alleys. And that, once again, they're using city funds that should otherwise.
This is all about criminalizing homelessness.
It's 100% about criminalizing homelessness, and really this example here of this gated alley program is a perfect snapshot into, you know, neighborhood groups getting fed up with the, you know, with the garbage, or, you know, people sleeping in the alleys, or, you know, people using the restroom in the alleys. And so they're going to the city and they're asking for help. And what the city is responding with is like, okay, let's put a gate there. When in actuality, what would really fucking help is let's give people access to restrooms consistently. And
Exactly. What this sounds like to me is like these are ways to support and help the people with capital that exist where shelterless people may congregate, kind of like in the zone, for instance,
right,
and gives them more opportunities to, you know, or makes it easier for them to like call the police and like do something about people trying to live. If you're not providing people with bathrooms to actually, you know, use, they're gonna, people can't control their like bodily functions. It's not like there's going to be a public restroom at like a McDonald's. Oftentimes you have to buy something to even use them these days.
yes,
And you know, they have the funding for it. You know they do.
right,
They can put a few porta potties out there and have somebody clean it as needed, you know? Like
right,
what
right,
I saw in the zone were people either using the bathroom in the alleyways or creating their own like
bucket,
bathroom areas um, with their tents and whatnot.
you're right.
Problem with that, though, of course, COVID was a main concern. These are very like tight knit places that multiple people would tend to like use because, unfortunately, that was how it had to be to meet everybody's needs. Also, the fact that they were forcing people to move their tents for these sweeps with the risk of getting all of their belongings thrown at a dumpster somewhere.
And that's actually addressed in another part of the survey is, you know, taking measures to potentially, you know, save people's things, or at least that's how they're making it sound, when we know that this has been happening for years and nothing's actually been done. And I'll point you to the second to last line item here: explore partnership opportunities to address public restrooms. And so before, you know, what this insinuates to me is before they put, you know, gates up in the alleyways, they hadn't thought to create partnership opportunities to address
Yeah.
public restrooms. Um,
This doesn't. Again, it's really vague.
it's
I
really
don't know what this means. This could mean that they're closing down public restrooms so that they don't have like homeless people in there because they think they're icky or whatever.
right.
Or maybe they are like what's the word I'm looking for? Communicating with businesses in order to let them use bathrooms when they need to. I don't know which one though.
Well,
Uh,
exactly, and also the zone is in an industrial area. You're not. I mean, there's a McDonald's off of Van Buren and Seventh Avenue right there.
that's
But
a huge fucking walk.
that's
You
a
might as
huge
well
fucking
use the
walk.
alley.
When's the last
Or
time you
put a
wanted?
porta potty. Sorry, English is hard. I know it's a running meme. But anyways, or just put a porta potty on every single corner. You can afford it.
Right. Yeah, and to be fair, you know, they have the porta potties now only with the opening of the lots, which completely incentivizes, you know, keeping people within those lots. But you have to have a CAS ID in order to take advantage of those
Yeah.
services, which you're literally putting fucking bathrooms under lock and key. And that's all I'm gonna say about that, because I will go
There's
on.
there's already a problem with like the way they implemented those like gated overflow areas, but
Yeah. Okay.
I
On
don't know if we can go into that right now.
this
But it
is a
pisses me off.
this is a really important section, and I think it's going to get you even more riled up talking about these fancy euphemisms that the city of Phoenix consistently will use in order to give themselves props when we really should be screaming in outrage. And so the
There's
first line
already one I
item,
see that pisses me off.
I'm sure there is. And so really cleanup is included in the plan, because what they're doing is they're using funds, like I said, they're using funds that are intended to help homelessness in order to clean up, areas and essentially throw away personal belongings that belong to people. I've seen it with my own eyes. I think you have also personally seen it, Shay, where these crews will come up and clean up without warning, and they'll throw away entire livelihoods of people. But what I want to point out really quickly about this first line item, C.1.1, is the Phoenix Cares program. And it's not just Phoenix that is using this ridiculous fucking term. I also noticed most recently Los Angeles has a care program. And what it is it's a gentrification hotline, and I mean it exactly that way. It's used to report encampments and used to criminalize, the unsheltered population. And I probably don't hate anything as much as I hate this Phoenix Cares program, and how extremely detrimental it is to our neighbors who are living on the street. What was the thing that immediately caught your eye?
Refer to existing park rules and regulations. Ensure that they are posted appropriately. That's not nearly as bad as the couple of the other things, but that was the first thing that caught my eye.
Right. No, and that's exactly right. They want to make sure that no one has an excuse for not adhering to these particular rules. So once they increase the font or whatever, they're going to be allowed to say, hey, you knew you weren't allowed to be in the park past sundown, but here you are, you have no excuse, we're going to give you a ticket. And that's just one possible avenue. But right below it is something even more concerning, C.3.5, implement the PRD Code of Conduct.
I have no idea what that is.
Yes, you have no idea what it is because it hasn't been discussed before. But what this code of conduct is, and I think it's addressed at least one other time towards the later part of the survey, is they want to create a code of conduct that that will essentially make certain behaviors illegal. And I get emotional talking about this because there's no other reason why they would want to create a list of acceptable behaviors other than to criminalize it. And this is a prime example of what we're fighting against when we advocate for people who are experiencing homelessness. This shit scares me, Shay, and I'll put out some more information with it. With a graphic that we'll be putting out later, but this is really, really, really problematic, and I don't know how to fight the city on passing something like this, and the fact that the plan has already been approved. I'm sorry. Yes, it's extremely problematic, and I'm going to go ahead and put no. This will be the only section that I put no in. And I'm going to say this section is extremely important because as it stands, it's harmful. It's causing harm in a very tangible way. I'm going ahead and paste that same phrase that we've been using for the others.
Well, this one I can't even read.
Thank you. That was exactly my point. And not only can you not read it, but the way it's broken down within the actual survey, if you actually visit the 30-page survey, this is broken up into like 10 pieces. And so the fact that they decided to not only put them all together and lay it out in such a way that you literally cannot read it is really indicative of the shady shit that they're trying to pull, and I don't know how to put it any other way, but if you squint, and me having been familiar with the plan, I know that P.1.1 is draft and implement a citywide code of conduct to create a framework for departments to have individual codes of conduct that address negative behavior in/on city facilities and properties consistently. The next line item is oversee creation and implementation of consistent codes of conduct for city facilities, includes parks, libraries, senior centers, and public housing facilities. So once again, they're creating a list of behaviors. So when they can't find anything that's explicitly illegal, they're going to go to this code of conduct and they're going to use it to criminalize our family on the streets. And
yeah, and I've seen how the way the police treat people down at the zone. It's not good. They're like I had said before, they're already like screaming and harassing people to move their all of their belongings in a very short time frame before they have cleanup crews like take their entire livelihoods. I saw a police officer kicking a man who was disabled, he didn't have any arms, kicking his tent and yelling at him to move his stuff, not offering to help him, berating him, and kicking his belongings. The police, the city, doesn't seem to care about these people. What I'm gaining from these last two things is all they're trying to do really is find ways to kick them while they're down, force them to pay more fines, find different ways to throw them in jail. It's not good.
it's awful. And if we're not doing this work in order to raise awareness around this, then no one really is. I'd like to just take a second on that note to point out that the service providers and nonprofits who are dedicated to really helping people on the street are answerable to the city in a very real way. It's hard to criticize the hand that feeds you. It's a dangerous game, and I don't fault I don't fault nonprofits or the human services campus for not calling bullshit in the same way that we do. Just thank you to everyone that's helping raise awareness around this. There are actually more problematic line items in here about trespassing and about giving property owners money in order to make them whole because of the blight that they consider associated with homelessness, when really no one's talking about the availability of trash cans or the ability of restrooms.
Am I the only one that noticed a pattern in how this got progressively worse as we got to the end of the survey?
We're not at the end, but it has gotten progressively worse. Honestly, the shit with the small font, that's they're also, towards this later part, they're also talking about checking in with SRP to be able to criminalize the canals. There's so much here, and I don't want to overwhelm people with information, but once again, this is not okay. This is not acceptable. And we're going to put maybe, and we're going to put extremely important. We're going to paste that same phrase.
And this one is oddly small too.
This one is oddly small, and once again we have that it looks blurry, so I don't know if they need to. They're probably going to use this honestly as an excuse to increase funding to their technical design department, because that's exactly something that they would do. But me, with my very little computer expertise, can say that whoever did this fucked it up. So let's go
Yeah,
ahead
you
and
could tell
see.
that graphic arts was really their life's passion.
This section is actually one of my favorites because it's actually pointing out, an intention that they have yet to actually follow through with.
Yeah,
So
except the
um,
second line bugs me.
that's exactly what bugs me too.
Remain transparent in the role that Phoenix plays in the regional plan to end homelessness.
Yes. And honestly, you'll see that if anyone is curious, you can actually print out the strategies to address homelessness, this 30-page plan, and that type of verbiage is echoed throughout the entire thing. They're constantly patting themselves on the back with these euphemisms and these buzzwords, and then saying, but we could do this to improve the situation. And so the fact that they put
Yeah.
remain transparent in the role that Phoenix plays in the regional plan to end homelessness. So y'all haven't done that since the very fucking beginning, and
No.
and it's really laughable. So I'm going to go ahead with the consistent answers. I'm going to paste that same phrase and click OK. Um,
Again, why is this?
they could have made
Everything else at the very beginning was like great and readable and like easily accessible. This is just about the size of like those other ones when it comes to like the text and information that they're trying to like throw at you. But why is it so small now?
right. And I'm going to give you a second to read over those because there's a lurking monster that wouldn't immediately become available unless you were familiar with the recent situation. Um, but I don't want to give it away. Is there anything that stands out here to you, Shay?
Yeah, the very first line. Uh,
Okay.
well, well, the first section, I guess you can say. Engaging Maricopa Association of Governments to retrieve persons experiencing homelessness, movements throughout the county over time, which will show the effects of city efforts in focus areas.
Right. And
Don't know what they mean by retrieve
I'm
persons.
concerned with that word too. And I honestly, I have yet to figure out exactly what's going on with that line item.
Yeah, that
Um,
scares the shit out of me. Sorry, English. That scares the shit out of me, honestly.
it could be something beneficial. So on the surface of what it sounds like is like, okay, we're gonna pay
Yeah,
attention to the movements of people in order to help better understand how we can provide help. But really,
maybe have a little secondhand trauma from what's going on in Oregon right now. Well,
right, right. No, no, and it's exactly that type of verbiage that we should be paying attention to. But uh, I don't doubt that it could be used in nefarious ways. What I actually wanted to point out was D.12.1, enter into a contract to provide bed availability via crisis response network. Now that is pretty much the gist of what it says within the entire plan. Like I said, there is a little bit more detail if you care to look up this D.12.1 in the plan. But what this actually is this was their opportunity to include the shelter bed portal that Phoenix PD will have primary access to. So the way that they outline this gives zero insight into the fact that Phoenix PD is going to be the one to primarily access this shelter bed portal. Um, and I think you're a little bit familiar with that and understand how problematic that is.
yeah, it can potentially be really bad because the whole thing is like the encampments are legally allowed to exist as long as as the shelters are full, which they tend to be, right?
Right,
Even before COVID.
right.
But I know places have purposely been keeping beds empty without accepting new people in order to get past that legislation that was passed through the Supreme Court, I believe, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's one facet of it. Mostly it's the fact that, the city of Phoenix has been, and I should be more particular, but Phoenix City Council, Kate Gallego, and Nowakowski have been actively trying to disperse the population of the zone for quite a while. And what this does is it not only criminalizes people who are sleeping anywhere on Phoenix streets and essentially might be forced to be relocated to an entirely different part of Phoenix in order to accept this shelter bed to avoid criminalization. But really, it's just displacing people. And so, if you go down to a place like the Zone and can show that there's bed availability at some small shelter in North Phoenix, you're moving people, across tens of miles and moving them essentially away from services that they need, or maybe away from any family or grounding that they have within the area that they're staying.
Potentially even their jobs.
Potentially also their jobs, absolutely. Yeah, so just the fact that it's framed so benign here, and really what we understand about it is far more problematic than any of this alludes to. We're once
Yeah.
again going to put maybe and extremely important.
Now, there is one thing I want to just clarify, maybe for the people that are watching this.
Sure.
Now, everybody knows I didn't read the plan. I think that was discussed a little bit earlier, but you have. Could
Yes.
you speak on how vague the wording in the plan itself is, despite the fact that it's 30 pages long and tells you nothing?
Right. Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Also, we're at the end of the survey, so that feels okay. Um, I'm going to wait to submit that so I don't put my personal information out on the interweb. But
Smart idea.
yes, but with that, Shay, I want to say it's intentional. It's really intentional. This, I'm looking and holding at the plan, in front of me, and I was a little bit overwhelmed just struggling to read through the entire thing. But it was confusing to be overwhelmed, because how is it that you're overwhelmed by something that consistently says nothing? So they do give a little bit more insight. They name a few partners, which is something they hadn't done throughout this entire survey. Was they hadn't named any of the nonprofits that they are working with. They named CBI, which is Community Bridges Inc., who primarily holds the contract for mental health services, responsible for responding to people experiencing homelessness calls, etc. The plan is really, really vague, and it's long. And so I understand that probably no one wants to take the time to go through this, and I don't blame you. The fact of the matter is, we need to be able to have transparency in every step of the way. We need to make sure that they're not, pulling the wool over our eyes, because I feel like that's the only thing they've done since I've started to pay attention to this issue within the past couple years. It's intentional. It's intentional that I want people to understand. I think the only way to remedy this situation is to halt the plan immediately as it stands, and not let anything else from the plan go through until we're given the option to approve each of these actions item by item, because that's the only chance we're going to know everything that they're planning to include in it, and that's the only way we're going to make an informed decision. Yeah, I completely reject the plan as it stands, but really it's not about me. It's about giving people experiencing homelessness, people closest to the problem, a chance to weigh in on this, and it's their perspective that matters most.
I agree 100%. The people that on for the most part, sorry, the people that'll know what's best for them are usually the people experiencing the problem 100% of the time. Uh,
Absolutely.
just to go over what I was saying earlier, when we were talking to people down in the zone, one of the first things that they said that they wanted was a job.
Right. Right.
And like, if you're doing everything that'll keep them away from employment, you're not really helping them.
Right.
Criminalizing
Yeah.
shelterlessness and homelessness is how you make things worse for them.
Not only is it completely fucking wrong in
Yeah.
every perspective, but it's also completely counterproductive to, you know, to what we consider safety and what we consider, you know, healthy communities. So
You're not
thank
going
you.
to end homelessness by, you know, making things worse.
Yes, yes, 100%. Thank you so much, Shay, for going through the survey with me and for giving your honest input. And I encourage anyone else who wants to participate and help us along with this journey to go ahead and leave a comment. Like I said, that will be available on our Instagram and Facebook. It'll probably be a bit.ly address in order to keep things concise. And also feel free to absolutely message us directly. Send us your questions. I'm down to help gain insight into whatever comes up. So thank you, and I appreciate y'all.